It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Leo Sulzbacher. We're in your beautiful home in Beit Vegan in Yerushalayim. And Leo, you were born in Düsseldorf in Germany before the war.
Before the war.
What year were you born?
In 1936. I have two brothers who unfortunately are no longer with us. One brother died a month or two ago, and another one about 9 years ago. They were also born in Düsseldorf, and we have a sister, but she was born in 1937. By that time, my mother was expecting, but the hospital in Düsseldorf was not taking in any Jewish women, so she went to Köln, and my sister was born in Cologne. So my father had been a banker, and I think in the end of the 20s or 30s he stopped that. He'd made a lot of money, and he started community work. He was in the German army in the First World War, but he did whatever he could to get out of it. But he remembers being in the trenches on the Seder night. But he got out because he made himself not well. The family Sulzbacher was my father was born in Frankfurt am Main in 1896. My mother was born in Gelsenkirchen in 1907, I think, and they married in Köln in 1929. My father, already in 1933, he realized that what's going to happen, although Jews had been in Germany for 1,000 years, he saw that what was coming, and he started making preparations to leave Germany. We only actually left in October 1938, a few weeks before Kristalnacht. That is, my mother, my father, Sholem, and the 4 children left then. And my grandparents, that's my father's parents, I think they came a little later, but they also came out, and we moved into a house in Bethune Road in Stamford Hill, which my father bought. I don't remember anything about Germany. I was only 2 years and a few months when we left, so I don't have any of them recollections of life in Germany. But my older brother, he was born in November 29, he went to school there, and my other brother, he was born in 32, he also went to school. So I don't know much about that. And we moved to London, and we settled there. My grandparents came as well and lived in that house. But when war broke out in September 39, the British were very worried about a lot of Germans who'd come into England, and they said, we haven't got time to investigate all the Germans. We have to send them away. My father there's a whole story about it, but he was given a classification A, which was the most dangerous people. There's a long story about that, and he was sent to Canada on the Arandora Star. But this was a well-known luxury liner before the war, and they set sail from Liverpool, but one day out, I think, it was torpedoed in the Irish Sea, and my father, on the night before, he had already heard, not that there was going to be, but he heard they're talking about life belts, and he got hold of one. And in the night, he heard a big bang, and he went up and he jumped he jumped into the Irish Sea. It was in I think in June or July, so it wasn't so, in winter it would have been rather. But he was picked up eventually, and there were some other people, so a lot of people drowned in that. There were Jews there, but there were also Italians, and there were some Nazi people as well. But a lot of people actually drowned. He was picked up and I think he was dropped in Scotland somewhere, but 10 days later he was put on a boat, the Dunera, which a lot of people know about that. It was not very comfortable, and they went to Australia. He was there. And meanwhile, on Kaf Aleph Elul in 1940, living in that house were my grandparents, my father's parents, his sister.
Yeah. Can I have a look?
Yeah.
This is a picture of your
father's parents, my grandparents. My grandfather was at that stage 80 and my grandmother 70. So they were living in that house together with my father's sister, whose husband had been in Dachau and was murdered in Dachau, and also my father's brother with his wife, although they didn't live in that house, but they came every evening to visit his parents. So they were in that house. At 7:30 in the evening, a bomb fell directly on that house and they were all killed. My father at that time was in Australia, my mother and the children were in the Isle of Man. Now, at that time we didn't say Gamzulatava, but had the British not sent us away, I wouldn't be sitting here today, because we were living in that house. It's only because we were sent away that I'm... yeah, that's the story. My mother, she was in Isle of Man, she was allowed to come, but with a police lady with her, that she didn't run away, to see what she could salvage. I mean, she couldn't salvage much, but the 5 people were buried in the Adas cemetery in Enfield. Talking about that, a few years ago, 2 of my sons were in Enfield, and one of them called me up and said, "Daddy, the Matsevas are beginning to, they're not in a good state, because they were probably only put up at the end of the war. And if you or your generation doesn't do something about it, no, then the next generation isn't." So we decided, the 4 of us, between us, that we would renew the Matsevas, which we did. Not long after that no, that's my wife's parents. Not long after that, they were clearing up this was in 1952, they were clearing up, not so long after the rubble from the house in Bessie Road, and they came across a jar with gold coins in. This became, and now they had to find out who it belonged to, and it was they couldn't find out. They sent a letter out that this was in September, by February a certain day, if nobody comes forward, half of the value will be to the state and half to those who found the gold. But it became a bit news, and my father got to hear about it, and because it went to the coroner. It was actually Shushan Purim 1942. I didn't go with, I should have gone, I realized that afterwards. and he was able to prove, I don't know how, that they belonged to him. So they were handed to him. There were 80 coins in there, $20 coins. I have a coin here, I'll show you. But he was not allowed to keep it, because at that time you were not allowed to deal in gold or anything. So the representative of the British said, sorry, but we'll pay you the official price, which they did. It was about, must be £1,000, something like that. But we got a lot, the news went around the world. This about the coins that had been buried there for 60 or 70 years. And but that was the story of the gold coins. My father did say he thinks there should be more. So how did the gold coins come to be buried in the garden of Bessin Row? My father, somehow or other, he smuggled them into England, maybe not all at one go, and he put them in a safe, either a bank or something. I have seen actually the receipt for £2, I think, for a year or 2 years that they were there. In 1940, they were very worried that Hitler, was intending to invade Britain. And he could have walked into, because they couldn't have stopped them. So my late uncle, my father's brother, decided to take the coins out of there and bury them in the garden there. And somebody said to him, no, tell me where because in case something happens. He said, not necessary, there's 5 people living there. I don't have to tell you, because they'll know where I put it. But of course they were all killed in that. That was the first, and many years later, in 1997 or so, that new building was there, and I think there were people there who needed to, they were not 100%, so they were looked after there. And in the garden there, they had a little pond with, I think there's probably some gold. Anyway, one of the ladies said, now as we're already dealing with it, we should make it a bit bigger. So they had a good idea, and they did, and in that space which they made, they found another glass, a jar with gold coins in them. Now, I mean, the fellow there could have taken them and taken the plane and gone away, but he didn't. He handed it in, and now they had to find out who belonged to them. Again, this was a big problem. And somebody who was interested in coins, he remembered from 1952, and then he advised them. And so they sent a letter to my late brother, who had by then gone to Yerushalayim, that you may be interested to know that this. Anyway, so there was another coroner's meeting. I think he went, it was an Erev Pesach. He was still living no, was he living? I don't know. Anyway, but then it was a formality, and those were handed to us, and eventually we put them up for auction, but we gave one to the Hackney Museum. That's me there. Many years I was in London, so I went there, and there you probably can't see the coin, but on the above there is a story about the coin.
And you donated it to the museum?
Just one coin, yes. I mean, today they're worth about £1,500 each. gold. I'll show you. I've got one. It doesn't belong. It belongs to the family, but one we gave to Hackney Museum. One of my nephews wanted to buy it, so I sold it to him, and the one I've got here. The rest went to auction. This story, as I said, I don't know the one who's Sulzbacher, is it the fellow? He wrote 48 stories. Here, this is actually a story which my son in Gateshead wrote about this. You can have that because it's
wow, Divine Providence Uncovered.
Yeah. And here is when was it? This was in November 2011. They were sold here by Morton and Eden. It was actually in Sotheby's place. And
we can have a look at, and these are the gold coins.
These, yeah, I spoke to them. They say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 of them, which he thinks are worth. I mean, I gave them to, I can't remember what the people, the big people. They said the fact that they were buried is nothing. We will just pay you for the gold value. But I said that's not good enough. So I phoned up the British Museum, and I said, you always get some where you've got a right, so what do you do with them? So he gave me name of two auctioneers. One of them was Morton and Eden. So I phoned them up, and he said he knows them. Everybody knew about this. He certainly thinks that there is more money than just the value of the gold, with the story behind it. So I think it was Spink was the first people. I had them collected from there, and then he contacted me and said there's 10 of these coins which he thinks something special about each of them, and the rest, there was 77 altogether, and 67 went in one lot. There's one here which was sold for £4,000 plus 20%. Yeah. I don't know why it's special, but...
and where were the coins from?
Where were they from? They were what my father brought smuggled into England.
But the origins of the coins?
Oh, they were American $20 coins. I'll show you the one, I've got one here. But this is what, and they also put a story there, the Hackney Hall. And they went for altogether about £90,000.
Wow.
So we said, and this happened after we had decided to have the Matsevers in Enfield. I mean, it didn't cost 90,000. Yes.
This is the most incredible story.
Yeah, and I tell you, it was all over the.
So this was the Morton and Eden. And Martin Sulzbacher, that's your brother?
Max Sulzbacher is my brother. Yes, he's no longer with us.
This is the one they went for. Sure, that is incredible.
Yeah, it is a story of the gold coins. As I said, I think Sulzbacher, the one who wrote, is a book 48, and in there is also the story of this. But again, it went around the world. This story it was so. I've said it so often, but I say it again. We never asked my father, how many coins did you put in? So we know that 160 were buried there, but
there could be even more.
Well,
have people tried to
British Museum they no, and I'm not sure. They were in glass and about 2 feet down. I'm not sure that they would have found, but no, nothing further was found. But we never asked our father. He said there should be some more. Why didn't we ask him, Daddy, how many did you put in the bank? Of course, that receipt doesn't say how. It's private. Yeah. So anyway, 160 of them were buried in 2 separate jars. And there's a picture there of the jar, actually, in which they were.
And was that donated to the museum as well?
Yeah, yes, the jar as well.
And we have a picture here. Was this from?
This is not very good. Well, that probably is a better picture of my parents there and my 2 brothers. I'm not sure. 1965.
And this picture.
This was taken in Düsseldorf. Would have been in Düsseldorf. Yeah. Probably 90 before we left.
And are you in the?
That's me, and that's my sister. That's my brother Max, the oldest one, and that's my brother Walter, who was nifted a couple of months ago.
And your parents?
And this are my father and my mother, yeah. That was before we left for England. But in 1938, I was 2 years in, and she was 1 year.
And Max, it's amazing that you were close with your brothers, with your family. You all stayed very close together.
Yes. I mean, my sister went on Aliyah in about 1960. Mm-hmm. So, and she got married here. My brother Walter and his wife, they came a few years before we, probably 23 years ago, and we came 19 years ago. They lived in Hanover, and we moved straight to Bergen. My father, when he got back, I think first he had no. The first thing he did when he came was went to the bank, however, and a barrack. I think there was 1 coin was in that place, and the man said to him, "Well, your brother came. He had authority and took them out. There's nothing here." So he was he didn't have much money. I think he was working in Camden Town with people who made probably a Jewish firm making toilet paper, I think. But he already had started in Stamford Hill in Basin Road selling Sforim. And he did that in our house in Golders Green, and he built up his shop. At that time there was no other shop in Golders Green which was selling Sforim or Talesum or anything like that. And he managed to do that till 1980, when he had a small stroke. It wasn't, but he was no longer able to do it, and eventually he was nifted in 1985. And the business, was not anymore. And my mother, Oleh Sholem, she came on Aliyah probably a few years later, about 1987, 87, and she lived in Beit Bad and Hebron. She was very happy there. She lived there for 14 years, and she was nifted in 97 at the age of 90. Yeah, that's about
Leah, can I just ask, did you ever ask your father, when he was in the German army, because it was a very exceptionally difficult situation that you had Jewish, German in the army fighting against French or other allies who were also Jewish, so you had Jews fighting against Jews.
He was very unhappy about that. But I just got the reason 12,000 Jewish soldiers were killed in the First World War. But as I say, he managed to get out of there. There are pictures of him, but I haven't got an army uniform. I've seen my sister-in-law show me.
And do you remember when your father came back, when you went to meet him, the first time you saw him when he came back?
Yeah, I didn't remember him probably from when I was 2 years old. I don't think so. We actually stayed with friends, the Jacobsons, in Epsom, which is south of London, till my father could arrange he rented a house in Golders Green, which eventually we bought. But money was pretty scarce in those, at the beginning. But also, he also took in, looked after three children from my father's sister, the Foist they're called, and one from my father's brother. So these were orphans, and the two girls lived in our house with us, and they were brought us in. And they always say they were treated as if they were our sisters, and the son, and one of them, one of the Foist, he lives here in Hachidain, by Began. He's over 90 now. His wife actually was nifted 2 weeks ago, but he says he will never forget what my parents did for him, because they were alone there. So it was a big...
And you were close?
Yeah, sure. With the girls, they're like sisters. There's one, the daughter of my father's brother, she's now just turned 91. She lives in Golders Green. Yes, I found her last week. I found her, yeah. But the other sister, they moved to first to Netanya, and then they were recovered, but they passed away already. Yeah, that's...
And can I just ask, did you, how many years did you stay in Stamford Hill before moving to Golders Green?
Well, we didn't stay very long. We moved in there in October 38, when we arrived from Germany, and in 1940 we were told to get out. I'm not told, we were sent to the Isle of Man.
And that saved your life?
And that saved our life, yes. And when we came back, then, as I say, we were in Epsom, and then my father came back in 1941. He would have come back. Yeah, as soon as he could come back. But there was also, it was a 3-month journey. It was also a bit dangerous, but he survived. He always said he circled the world on His Majesty's. And one way, when they went to Australia, they went in the Suez, through the Suez Canal, and the other way back, the Panama Canal, or the other way around. But it was a 3-month journey, and then to Nera was a terrible ship. I mean, the books have been written about it, you may have heard. The soldiers there were the scum of the...
It was terrible.
And
they put real anti-Semitic Germans together with German refugees.
Yeah, yeah. And of course they were told, the Australians, there's a boat coming with dangerous, and when they see there's nobody coming, they say, well, what were you talking about? So, yes.
And your father continued, he was able to keep from all this time?
Yeah, I think in the first he was with Jews who were not interested, but then they moved, and then he was with Fum people there, yes. And he said that's where he learned how to line. And when he came back, we joined Monkshul as soon as we moved into, and I davened there for 60 years.
In Monkshul?
Monkshul, yeah. So,
and you have a picture of Rav?
Yes, yes.
So you saw Golders Green grow, that it became
Golders Green. There was Rabbi Chonon. He started a shul in Alba Gardens. I know the house there, and there were 2 rooms downstairs, and they cut a little bit thin, so there's one side of the women and one of the men. But today, of course, that's a long time ago, and then he moved had his shul on Golders Green Road. But there weren't, today it's quite different. There was Monkshul and the Dunstan Road. Dunstan Road was already, I think, in 1920s. Was a shul there, but otherwise, I think maybe Rabbi Erntor, who was also on this Divne, in Bridge Lane, he had a small minyan. But
and can I ask, what school did you go to?
I went to the Hasmonean Grammar School. And I first went when we moved to Golders Green in 1942. I went to Wessex Gardens, which was a Goyish school, and I was there till the Nora Primary School opened in October 44. So in 1942, so I was in a Goyish school. It was mixed as well. I remember they were laughing at me because of my accent. My first language was German, so I mean I could speak English then, I presume, but then.
Did you make friends, Jewish and non-Jewish friends?
I know that.
Were there any other Jewish children in your class?
I don't really remember. I know that Matishur Salomon, who is well known, he was engaged, but he's in Lakewood, and he went to that school, and his older brother, was my age, who was nifted a few years ago, also went to that school. But then, in as I say, in October 44, it was Monk's Shul opened in Menorah Primary School, and there were 8 children there on the first day. There was myself, my sister, and 2 from Sneath Avenue in Israel. So there's 4, and I have even here, I have the first a list of the first people who were there that day. I mean, today it's a big school, but that was those days. If I can find it, yes, here it is. This is 1944. This was the first. See, people said you were number 1 then. I wasn't number 1. I see that I was number 4. There was Mr. name of parent. No, I think this is better. Scholar's name in full. Gertie Strauss, Ruth Salomon. That was to be a sister of Matishur. Then Miriam Sulzbacher, my sister, and Leah Sulzbacher. Then was Miriam Israel, Henry Israel. They were the same. Arthur Potterman and I, Bodenheimer.
That's is this Judith? They were twins. They were the twin Bodenheimers.
Don't know. And those were the 8 people who were there on the 31st October 1944. And then other people came afterwards, in November 44. Some of these people I still know, the Landskons, I think. Tita Landskon, and Ronnie Landskon, he's in Petah Tikva, she lives in London. David Jacobson, of course I know very well. I don't know Louis Felsenstein, by Burma, Van Gelder, Van Gelder.
It's amazing that you... How did you manage to receive this?
Because a cousin, she worked there, and this is going back a few years I got this, and she found this and she made a copy. Yeah, this is quite... It probably says when I left there. Yes, in January 47 I left there and joined the Hashem Grammar School, and there is a picture of me winning every year I had in the Parliament Hill, Victor High School and Hashem Grammar School, and this I won there, never ran again, 880 yards for boys under 12. This would be 1947. That's me.
And what is your memories of Rabbi Schoenfeld?
Not very much. I remember he used to come and speak in school sometimes, but otherwise I didn't have any connection.
Did you know at that time that he had saved so many Jews during before the Shoah and after the Shoah?
No, so I didn't know that.
Because he's one of the unsung heroes. He's
yeah, absolutely. I see on my tablet that his son, he had
Jonathan,
the always born him. I think this Shabbos or last Shabbos, because he wrote, I think the 4th of Adar was the outside for his father, and so he paid for the refreshments, I think. I was upon him.
And after school, did you go to yeshiva?
No, I didn't go to yeshiva. I went straight to work. It wasn't that so common in those days that you automatically went to...
Had you heard of Gateshead?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I remember I went with because the Solomons, they lived in Golders Green, but they moved to Gateshead, and my parents got friendly with the Solomon, and I remember going with my sister after the war to Gateshead, and yes, Joseph was the older Joseph, and Matisho, they came to London and stayed with us. So yeah, I'm sure that was my first visit to Gateshead. That was probably 1946. But now I've got a son, lives with 9 children in Gateshead, and also 2 grandchildren, married grandchildren. And in fact, last Shabbos was the bas mitzvah of our oldest great-grandchild, a girl actually, obviously it says bas mitzvah, she was our first great-grandchild, and she now became bas mitzvah. We weren't there, but her parents, who live in London, they were there. Yeah, that's my life. And what else can I say? We came on Aliyah. I always wanted to come to Eretz. So in fact, in early 1970, I wanted to come with our children. Not all of them, but most of them had been born by then, but it didn't work out, and when I think back, I'm very happy we didn't, because here it's difficult. You don't have much of choice. You either send them to the cheder or you send them to schools which are not. Whereas in London you know what you're doing. So all my boys, they went to, one of them went to a Pater's house for the primary school, but the others went to a normal primary school, and all my boys went to Hasmonean. And my daughter as well went to the Hasmonean. When I joined the Hasmonean in 1947, they were still mixed. But then, I think...
it became separate.
It was separate, yes. In September 47, they became separate.
And Leo, have you ever been to Germany?
No. Because my in-laws lived in Copenhagen, as you heard. And I think one year we were in Holland, I think, and then I drove to Copenhagen via North German. And in fact, we had to stay the night, otherwise we would have arrived in Copenhagen at 2 o'clock in the morning. That was not a very good idea. But otherwise, no, I didn't go back to. And my father had no, he didn't. I know that my oldest brother, Max, he was invited to go to Düsseldorf. They paid, for everything, and but I wasn't ever asked. No, I wouldn't have gone. No.
And what happened to extended family that didn't come to England?
No.
Do you have family that remained in Germany?
Certainly not any close family. No, they all came.
Did you ever ask your father what gave him the tremendous strength? Because it's not a simple thing to pick up and to leave. To decide to leave.
No, but he realized that if you don't leave, you'll be facing. I mean, the 30s, the Nazis, Hitler took.
But a lot of people thought it would be a passing phase.
But 50% of German Jews actually left. And those who sent to Dachau, I think they were told, get out within 2 or 3 weeks. That saved their lives, of course. I mean, some of them were murdered in Dachau, but they were, whether they did, but as I say, 50% of German Jews got out. But the Jews in Eastern Europe, in Poland, nobody wanted them, of course.
And growing up in England, did you meet with any Kindertransport or any survivors after the war? Did your family?
Not that I recall. There was always visitors in our house. My mother was always there. Lonely ladies, especially, they're always there. But I think they brought with them. I think in the story they read that she was half Jewish. It doesn't exist half. Either you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. Help, a young lady help. But otherwise, no. Of course, we didn't know what was going on in Europe.
And can I ask, when did you first? As your memories, when were you? Did you really understand what had happened during the Shoah, during the Holocaust?
No, only later on we got to know. No, we didn't know.
During the war years?
No, we didn't know. Certainly not. We had in our house in Sneath Avenue. What was the name? It was this steel top and steel thing, and I remember when the siren went, we used to go down underneath this, so if the house was destroyed, we would have been safe. In fact, that was stayed in our house till the end. because my father used to do it for his books. The books are heavy, and everybody can. Amazing people still say, Sulzbacher. I remember there was a butcher, and we had bought some books. Oh yeah, that was my father, and then the children used to get a sweet. But no, they all remember this thing. I think we offered it to the War Museum. At the end they offered it, but they had one already. They didn't need another one. Yeah. But as I said, going back to that, we were living in that house in Stamford Hill, and had we not been sent away, but Sprache wanted us to survive.
It's really is.
Our children, we have a lot of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I think there are 4 great-grandchildren expected.
Oh, you're wonderful. And Leo, if I can just ask, what message do you give to your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and to the future generations?
Yeah.
Because you've lived through epic times. You've lived through...
Because I was a bit too young to know. My brother would have known. I mean, he knew much more, and also about our family that he was knew much more about. But as I say, we grew up in Munksur, and I'm delighted that my children and grandchildren, and even our great-grandchild goes there as well with his father, and that's the 5th generation. If you consider my father, the 5th generation is now Divne in Munksur, yes. And Munksur is a kehillah. We don't have that here. A kehillah we don't have. We have a shul.
But there are certain places where there are kehillahs.
Yeah, but Munksur here every year they have this Shona. You can see this. They look. I mean, here the gunman looks. If you die, most people die at the time. Ilya looks after you. Yeah.
But you happy you came to Israel that you...
Yeah, I always wanted to come here. I'm very happy. I already 10 years ago bought the 2 plots in Hamanuchas. Today you can't get it. One there, and my mother is buried there, and both of my brothers are there.
Well, yeah, I just want to thank you. I'm so extremely grateful to you, really, and it's really missing. Your life is full of, it's just unbelievable. And Baruch Hashem, you and your wife should just have Mazel Bracha, and I'm extremely grateful to you, and thank you so very much. I may be extremely good health, and thank you so much, really.
Pleasure. I want to show you the gold coin.
Oh, please, if you could show the gold coin, that is...
Yes.
It is just unbelievable.
This is the $20 gold coin, which was buried for 60 or 70 years in Stamford Hill.
And on the reverse side?
In God we trust, somewhere, it's small writing. It's not pure gold, of course. This is 97%, I think.
But it was such a good thing that you never melted it down.
Yeah, no.
There were people that wanted it to pay you for the gold.
Yeah, no. This is it's $20. But as I say, it's what year is this? I think the oldest one there was about 1850 something. I think this is 1913, actually. Yeah.
But also that your father had the wisdom to buy these gold coins.
Yeah, because this was easy to
transport, to take.
Yes, you weren't allowed to take money out. I'm sure. Yeah, I think here it says In God we trust, but you probably can't see at the bottom there.
And another thing, Leo, when one left Germany, often you were searched.
Yes, I have no idea when he may have done it earlier. I don't know. I don't think he didn't go to. I know that he went to Holland often, and my brother asked him once, "Daddy, why didn't you go to Holland? You had connections there." Too near.
Because many did go, and then
they were, yeah.
And your father was a very wise, very.
Yeah,
he had such wisdom, such chokmah.
Yeah. Too near. Because in the First World War, they did go there and it was fine. But no, because Germany invaded Holland, France, Belgium.
Oh, thank you so much. I so appreciate it.